Welcome to the Inspire and Rewire Podcast, where we've got another episode via Zoom for you guys, and we're just going to hit it right off. Today's episode, we really wanted to get in touch with you guys and let you know why it is that we do what we do. Why do we sit here with you guys and upload a video every single Monday? Or, at least the closest thing to Monday if we have something going on with our schedule so that we can give you guys some sort of value. I'll let Isaiah start it off. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
We're doing well. We're doing well, man. Go ahead and start us off. Why do you do what you do on this podcast every single day that you hop on here?
And there's a lot of reasons, but I think one of the main things is most of the time when I do this, I'm pretty much speaking to myself. You know what I mean? And to what has helped me grow, what has helped me change, what has helped me evolve throughout life. So it's like I know if something has helped me, then if it can just help one other person, if it can just inspire one other person, if it can just motivate one other person to become better or chase their dreams or find purpose or get themselves out of anxiety, out of depression, out of sadness, it's like there's a reason for every playing field: mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. We're not just speaking on one thing here. We kind of speak about everything together because everything is everything. So I think really the main thing is, like, I know it's called Inspire and Rewire, but that's really the main thing, is like inspiration and to motivate, and also just to leave breadcrumbs for anybody listening. You know what I mean? And once you put something out there, it's out there forever. So say if I were to go tomorrow, I know I left something behind.
Mm,
I,
yeah,
I know at least I left behind a message. I left behind inspiration. I left behind knowledge. I left behind wisdom. I left behind creation. I left behind art. And that's really what creation is all about to me. Is like we're all gonna go one day, and maybe someday, 100 years from now, somebody will be watching this like, hey, he's right. We all gonna go one day, and they're gonna love you more when you're gone. They're gonna probably hate you when you're here, but hey, that's why we do it.
yes, sir. I love that. You identified with a lot of the points that we obviously do this because you've been my friend for a long time now. I believe we're going on 6 years, something like that. And really, why I do this, why I hopped on here and I decided this is what I wanted to do is because God called me to do it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
God called me to do it. I never thought I'd be doing a podcast. I never thought that I'd be sitting here sharing knowledge with the world. I never thought that I'd be, you know, regurgitating information that helped me elevate my state of mind, physicality, and my spirit. It was never part of my plan. It was part of God's plan. And so, upon sitting down and talking to God and within trying to find my purpose, because I felt like I always had my purpose, but as I elevated in life, my purpose seemed to just elevate with me. My purpose never stayed the same. And upon taking the journey of self growth and development, I felt like my purpose elevated dramatically to the point where it's still elevating, but I feel so happy every time that I get on here. It's effortless. I don't actually have to sit here and try or, make myself sound like I know more than I know or anything like that. It's just literally me getting on here and sharing what's helped me throughout my life because God pointed me in this direction. And I think part of the things that resonated with me is that if you're somebody who's gone through certain things in life, and you choose not to share that, you're literally doing a disservice to humanity and you're being egotistical without you even understanding that you are because you literally have the answers that other people seek, but you're so selfish that you're going to keep that to yourself. And I don't want to be that. I want to be able to help. And I've always been somebody to uplift my community. I've always been somebody to help my friends out, my people. I always want to bring them up with me. And I feel like this is the main way, my main avenue, if you will, to be able to do that because you can't force anybody up. But you guys hopping on here on this live, you guys hopping on here on YouTube and searching our content and paying attention to it, that's your free will. And if you're doing that, it's because you want to gain something out of it. And so I want to be able to be a voice to those people because I used to try and help the people that I wanted to help, but the people that I wanted to help didn't want to help themselves. And so the people who are on here is because they want to help themselves. And so by them wanting to help themselves, I actually have something to offer. I'm not just wasting my time and saliva. You feel me?
Yeah, and full transparency, this was not prepared. I threw a left hook at Vic that he didn't even see coming. He didn't even know, like, so for me, I didn't prepare that answer. You know, I could probably sit here and come up with a million reasons why I truly do this or why it's truly inspiring. You got a cat jumping up in the back.
You can see her. Oh God.
Yeah.
They,
Nah, it's blurred, but it's just, hey, she part of
here,
the
hold on.
show
Let me
now.
let me let her out to her scratch post. Give me a second. I was I was gonna let her out, but she's chilling. So yeah, it is what it is. But yeah,
Yeah,
anyway,
but full
keep going. Yeah,
transparency,
this wasn't prepared. Yeah, keep going.
yeah, we don't ever write down, read from a script, nothing. So everything is straight from the heart. And like he said, you know, it's a God calling because I never wanted to be in front of a camera. You know, the old me that I identified with, I didn't want to be in front of a camera. I didn't want to be so called in a limelight. I didn't want attention. I didn't want none of that. But, you know, you get to a certain point and you realize that it's bigger than you. It's not about you. It's not about your insecurities. It's not about your fears. It's not about this body. It's not about how you look. It's about how you can serve humanity. And God gave us gifts for to use them. You know, the reason for the gift is to use it. And if you're not using it, then you know who is suffering because you're not being the best version of yourself.
Mhm.
You know, and that's the most powerful question you can ask. Who is suffering because you're not using your gifts? If you don't want to do it for you, okay, who can you do it for? Your kids, your family, your whoever you want to inspire. Like we all have a story, we all have gifts, we all have strengths that we could be using out here to uplift humanity. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, definitely uplifting her humanity and passing on the torch. You know, passing on the torch. For me, it's just you said something powerful when I was sitting outside and I had a phone call with you. It was like a 5 minute call, and you said, we are talking about topics that we wanted to talk about, and you said, what basically whatever God wants you to convey. And I think that that's literally just so simplistic, yet it's so powerful because it is what God wants me to convey. Everything that I'm speaking right now is what God wants me to convey. I didn't sit here and analyze or think about what it is that I'm going to say. None of that. Everything that's coming out is just pure authenticity, and half of it is not even just me speaking, it's just my spirit. And there's a difference between you speaking and your spirit speaking because I don't have trouble letting my words flow. When it's just you speaking, half of the time it's because you are trying to make your words flow. And when the words are just flowing without intention, they're just coming out. That's your spirit speaking. And that's the elevation that I try to get to when I hop on these podcasts is I don't want my words to flow through me. I want my words to flow through spirit, and it's not always like that. Obviously, some days I feel like I get on here and I have to try a little harder than other days. But for the most part, I would say like 90% of the time, it's natural flow. It's natural flow. And I love the fact that I know it helps some people. I know for a fact it helps some people because I've had many, many people just tell me that they think people that I wouldn't even think are paying attention to what it is that I say that I'm doing, or they literally are just like, man, you really helped me out. The thing that you said there, and things like that, just really, really keep me motivated. Just keep going. But I don't need the motivation because I do it out of pleasure.
Yeah, and that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize is it be the one trying to act like they don't see you, trying to act like they're too cool for school, you know what I mean? Like they're not paying attention, but those are the ones that are really watching. And those are the ones who are making the biggest impact. And those are the ones that need this the most. Because that's exactly what we're trying to say is, you know, basically to not only get out your comfort zone, but just be honest with yourself about whatever it is. Like if somebody helped you, why can't you reach out and say, hey, you know, that video you posted last week, hey man, I appreciated that. I appreciated the message, what you said at 3 minutes, 23 seconds really hit home. You know, it got me out of a hole. It got me out of this. It got me through this. It got me over this. It got me under this. But, you know, a lot of the times we're so in our way with our ego, our pride, whether it's jealous or envy, that we don't give people the flowers when they deserve it, you know? It's not till somebody passes away or something tragic happens that then people want to give people their flowers, or like, oh, he was this or she was that or they were this or they were that. It's like, okay, but now it's too late, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And that happens all too often. You know, I believe we were having a similar conversation to this where we were discussing someone like Nipsey Hussle who passed away. And as soon as he passed away, his record sales went through the roof and nothing changed. His message was still the same. The only thing that changed is he's no longer here. And all of a sudden, everybody feels like they should acknowledge what was already here. And it happens too often. And I believe that we should be given the flowers when they're due because a lot of people in your life are underappreciated. It might be you, it might be somebody, it might be your mom, it might be your best friend, it might be, whoever it is. A lot of people out here are underappreciated. And you should learn to value people for who they are and set your ego to the side because most of the time that you're not valuing people the way that they should be valued, it's coming from ego, from an ego standpoint because you might be too prideful to say how you feel because you don't want to make yourself feel lesser than that person. That's the ego talking. You can't feel less because you know that you're equal. Just because somebody might know something that you don't doesn't make you less. It actually makes you the smart person to go out there and be if you're the type of person where somebody, it takes me back to like, I don't know, when I was like in second grade or third grade, people, my friends would ask me like, oh, have you seen this movie? And I never knew what the fuck the movie was, but I'd be like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a cool movie. And that was me like not trying to be like, oh, I haven't seen the movie, but I hadn't seen the movie, but my little kid ego is like, I can't tell my friends that, you know what I'm saying? And it's the same thing. Like you get older and it just becomes a different scenario, but it comes back to the same essence of you not wanting people to figure out that you're not something or that you don't know something. Like it's okay to not be at a certain level, and you won't get there unless you actually are humble enough to say, hey, I don't know the answer. Can you tell me the answer? And once you figure out the answer, then you actually know it rather than hiding that and just pretending like you know it, but really you're ignorant because you don't know the answer and you're too egotistical to give somebody else their flowers of like, hey man, you know this. I don't know this. Can you teach me this? So a lot of the times, it's our ego. Our ego gets in the way of a lot of things, and our ego ruins relationships. Our ego ruins our empathy towards people. Our ego ruins our ability to be able to be connected in unison to other people. And you can't get rid of the ego. You're never going to get rid of it, but you should at least try and have it under control. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and what you were kind of saying earlier reminds me of one of Kanye's quotes. He says, you know, if people keep treating you like you're not who you are, you'll forget who you are. And
Yeah.
I think that so many people haven't done the work yet to where they're not self actualized and haven't stepped into their identity of, you know, Christ consciousness or God consciousness, or that they're separate from this body and like that nothing in this world is bigger than they actually are. That, you know, they can't even get out their own way to tell people what they really want to say or how they really feel. And a lot of the times, like there's hundreds of biographies of great people, and there's a trend in all the stories that the people around them never see the greatness. The
Yeah.
people around them, the people around, the people closest, their mom, their dad, their uncle, the people they were seeking validation from, they couldn't even see who that person really was. So I think the most important thing in life is finding out who you are. You know, do your own research on yourself. Sit with yourself in silence and ask, who am I? What am I called to do? What am I here for? What's my purpose? What is my intentions? What do I love? What am I passionate about? You know, it's funny because I'll be at work with a 50, 60-year old, you know what I mean? And I'm talking people who've been in their field for 40 years. You know, these dudes are super sharp, you know, in their field and their lane of study. They're smart guys. You could throw their whole game off by asking them one question. What are you really passionate about? This is my favorite one. If money didn't exist, let's imagine for a second a world where money doesn't exist. What would you wake up and do every day that would truly make you happy? That would truly make you feel accomplished? That would truly make you feel fulfilled? That would truly make you feel like if I went tomorrow, I'd be good with this being my last day. You know, and that's the questions we need to ask to find out who we really are, to separate from our ego, our false self, and to separate from this body, and to really get in touch with our spirit and that childlike curiosity when you knew who you were as a child because the world hadn't polluted your mind yet.
That's powerful. Let me ask you this. What was the first step that you feel like when you were on this self-growth and development journey that you had to go through? You know, because I feel like it's different for everybody. Like for me, my first step was like stop identifying with my ego and like, you know, really just break down my ego in its entirety and understand how to treat people and stop thinking that I'm better than people because of my vanity and stop thinking that I'm better than people because of my money and like shit like that. Like that was probably my first step was like getting rid of my ego and then, shortly after that was like a spiritual awakening, understanding that we're all a whole and collectiveness. What was like your first thing where in this journey you had to do that before you can start on anything else?
I think for me personally, the first step is not even a step, it's a thought. It's a feeling in your intuition that you're capable of so much more. You know what I mean? So let me give you an example. When I was working at a warehouse for 850, unloading trailers, you know what I mean? Unloading trailers or packing boxes for 8 hours a day, just standing in one place doing the same thing over and over and over and over. And your intuition and your spirit is just telling you like, what are you doing? Like you're capable of so much more. You know what I mean? And I've had that feeling ever since I was young that, kind of that big goals, big dream, big ambition, big whatever. You know what I mean? Just always thought bigger than my environment. And so for me personally, and this answer can be different for everybody, obviously, but for me personally, step number one was just realizing that there was more and that you're capable of more. Cause it's like yeah, insecurities and all that stuff comes along the journey, but I think to even take one step forward, you got to start to think like, hey, I want more. There's more, and not material things, not this, not that. Just I know I'm not living to my full potential.
Yeah, I had a similar thought about that last week and I was having internal dialogue. I tend to have internal dialogue and I don't fight my internal dialogue. Like I'll literally talk to myself like I'm a friend. And I tend to have some deep thoughts when I do that. And I think I get a lot of my great ideas from my internal dialogue. And I was having internal dialogue last week, and one of the internal dialogues that I was having last week was what holds people back the most is their self-denial. Because the people who are willing and capable to analyze themselves and look at themselves and say, I could be so much more than I am, and I am not that yet. I am wasting my potential. Those are the people that have potential. But the people who sit there and say, I'm okay as I am, I don't have to do anything, and literally lie to themselves, those people don't stand a chance because they will not get out of that mentality of I'm okay the way that I am. I don't need to grow. It's like your friend who you know is fat, but you won't tell him he's fat because you don't want to hurt his feelings. But you know that they would be so much better and healthier if they choose to take care of themselves. Not because you want to hurt their feelings and have like fat phobia or anything like that, but the fact that you know that your friend is going to grow up to be 45 years old and they might not be the healthiest person you would love for them to be, like you think like that. It's the exact same thing when you lie to yourself and you know that you could be better and you know that you're not that person yet and you know you could be working on yourself, yet you lie to yourself because you don't want to do the work. Those people don't stand a chance. It's the people who literally look at themselves and say, I could be so much more than I am, and I am not that yet. I need to work on myself. Those people are the ones that have potential. And that was the internal dialogue I had last week.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that comes full circle to everything we've been speaking about. That comes full circle.
For a fact, bro.
Um, so what did you say was the first thing for you?
Yeah, for me it was my sister allowed my sister played a big role in my elevation. Um and I actually got an eye tattooed here. It's like it's my own eye, but it's a representation of what she opened my worldview up to because I was a dirt bag in high school and like it started in middle school I think because I always been
You
like
said I was a
I
dirtbag.
think it started in middle school to be quite honest with you because like in elementary, I was like cool and stuff, and I was just trying to be part of the crowd and just being a badass little kid. But then, like in middle school, like girls were digging me and shit, and it just like my ego was through the roof and stuff. And then like into high school, it got worse. But it was to the point where like my ego was so inflated that when I got to school, like when my sister started going to high school with me, I would avoid her because I didn't want to be seen with her and I didn't want to be seen with certain kids, and I didn't want to be associated or and just like that type of behavior of like how you got to be a dirtbag to fucking like not want to be seen with your sister. You feel me? And I was like it was that bad, like where my ego was. And I know that I hurt my sister's feelings, and I know I put her through a lot of shit, like mentally, and I never like acknowledged that or even thought about it. And then until like she would like bring that up. And so I was stuck in my ego, but that was like my first step was my sister like making me realize what a piece of shit I was and then me being able to acknowledge that because I literally outside of that like I was so close with my sister. You feel me? Like in like behind closed doors, I was like so close to my sister.
It was
But
just
like
that space you adopted that.
you feel me? But like once I went outside into like the big world, like I didn't want to be associated because my sister wasn't like cool and shit like that. Like my ego was so inflated, bro. And yeah, my sister was my first step into me being able to realize that that's not the way to fucking treat people or like I thought too much about myself, this, that, and the third. So it was like for me, it was like first being able to understand and realize that this is not how you treat people. your ego is way too fucking inflated. I used to think having a big ego was cool. I remember I would like think like you should have a big ego. Like I got a big ego, and I used to think that shit was cool. I didn't really understand. Like I would like look up like, oh, ego just means to think highly of oneself. And so like, yeah, I should think highly of myself. Like what you mean? But I didn't do no spiritual work or anything like that. And so for me, that was my first step was like diminishing my ego. Cause once I was able to look from the outside in, was like, damn, bro, like your sister does a lot for you. Your sister helps you in many ways. You love your sister. She doesn't deserve the way that you've treated her. And I think that was definitely my first step of awakening was stepping away from my ego and being vulnerable enough to not not shy away from the fact that like, dude, that's like piece of shit behavior. You feel me?
That's real because not a lot of people would ever, speak on that or admit that,
Mm,
especially openly, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
that's real vulnerable on your part, but I think why it was so powerful for you is because that came from such a place of love, You got I don't know if you're like most people. I know you pretty well, but most people, got really soft spots and real love for their family. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it probably almost accelerated your awakening since it came from such a place of love. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And you
Like if that was just a friend or a classmate, it probably wouldn't have happened as fast or
nah, not
as
at all.
drastic, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
since God was like, "Hey, I'm using your sister, somebody I'm gonna have to use somebody close to you to show you, nah, this is what I'm talking about. Zoom out and kind of see it from different perspectives." That's cool. That's powerful.
Yeah, I appreciate that, bro. I never actually looked at it from that lens, but now that you say that, it makes a lot of sense. It truly does. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that was definitely the first step for me. And then, from there was just small things like I was working on getting better. And then after that, it was this girl I used to kick it with. She was we used to smoke and shit, and she like her and her boyfriend, like I was cool with them, so it wasn't done like that. It was just like a friend. And one day she just texted me and she was like, look at this video I just found, I think you will like it. And she put me on to Aaron Abke. Aaron Abke, and he's a spiritual teacher, and he was teaching the law of one. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that scripture. It's a book called the Law of One, and the Law of One basically is a man channeling a different entity, and this is all documented live. And while he's channeling this entity, the entity goes by the name of Ra, and Ra is basically talking back to this man through the channelization, and people are documenting it. And essentially, talked about like consciousness, talked about self awakening, talked about positive and negative polarities. It talked about so much stuff that I was just mesmerized. I felt like I unlocked a whole new level of life. It was like, how did I never know this stuff? How did I never know like the collective consciousness? How did I never know that we're all one, and no matter how dark you are, the light will always win. I mean, if you haven't read The Law of One, it was life changing for me, and that was like the second thing for me was like that book, The Law of One, was just like, dang, dude, because there's like level one of conscious. Everything is alive, and when I say everything is alive, I mean everything. And it's like level one of consciousness would be like the rocks, like rocks and just objects, inanimate objects like that. You would think are like, oh, okay, like they have consciousness. We just don't think they do because they don't talk, walk, or anything like that. And then the second level of consciousness would be like the elements, like water, earth, fire. That's the second level of consciousness. They are very conscious. We just don't think of them as conscious because they don't talk like we do, or they don't act like we do. They don't have the components that we do. And then the third dimension of consciousness is us. Or no, excuse me, second dimension, first dimension is the rocks and the elements, so like earth, water, fire. And then like the second level of consciousness is pets, like our cats or our dogs. They're conscious enough to know their names and stuff, but they can't like talk like we do and stuff like that. And then the third level of consciousness is human beings. That's the third level of consciousness. And then there's seven level of consciousness, but then the fourth level of consciousness is someone like Jesus Christ or like a Buddha. You know what I'm saying? That's the fourth level of consciousness when you reach that. And then beyond that, when you get into the fifth dimension of level of consciousness, is basically like you're not even a human, you're just in your spirit. Like that's what it is. I could talk about it's so long, but essentially that piece of knowledge changed my life. I was like looking at the world so much differently, and it was just like, wow, I just felt like I unlocked a new level of life, you know?
Yeah, and I was calling to tell you today, it was something along those lines because I was reading this book and it was talking about the ego, but it didn't call it the ego. It was just talking about the difference when people actually acknowledge their spirit and operate from that sort of consciousness. They said if they don't realize that they're not just this body and that they're also spirit, then they'll go living their whole life like a stone and they'll never move.
Wow. That is so
And that's what I called to tell you earlier because I was like, oh, I got to remember this. So let me
yeah.
tell him this so that I remember it. But when I read that today, and I could say reading is one of the things that, man, like I had a mentor. He's like, if you want to succeed, you got to read. And I used to think reading was whack and all this stuff. I started reading, and boy, let me tell you, it changed my whole mind. Then it changed my life, because the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And then the more perspectives you can get. Sometimes it's not about even learning new things, or it's about seeing the same thing a different way.
Hmm. Yeah, literally. That's what it is half the time. It's just literally looking at the same thing a different way. And I believe that you're only going to be open, like you have to become the person that it is necessary in order for you to be able to be a recipient of the information you're supposed to receive. Because how the law of one elevated my consciousness and state of mind, I feel like if I wouldn't have diminished my ego first, I could have listened to that and I would have just been like, oh
You would have
wow,
rejected it.
you know what
You
I'm
wouldn't have been
saying?
ready for it.
So
Yeah.
yeah, like you have to become the person that's supposed to receive the information for it to be life changing to you. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
and that goes with the sayings, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, or
Mm-hmm.
when the teacher's ready, the student will appear. It's 1,000% correct because me and you or anybody could tell somebody the realest, most life-changing, drastically information. Like I could say the realest thing to somebody, but if they're not in an open-minded state, if they're in a rejective state, if there's somebody on somewhere on their spiritual journey to where they're just not ready for that information, it's gonna go in one ear and out the other. You know what I mean? So that's why one of our catchphrases for our program is I'm ready to grow, I'm ready to change. Because it's like if you say that, it's almost like an affirmation. I'm ready to grow. I'm ready to change. And if you're ready to grow, ready to change, nobody can stop you. But if you're unwilling to grow and not willing to change, nobody can help you. It's like those people in our life that we want to help. And back to that stone thing, just look around in your life and see how many people are living like a stone. So that means that they're only identifying with their body. They haven't fully realized their spirit and their identity in the God consciousness. So therefore, they may be in the same place for a large amount of years, or say working the same place or doing the same thing, which is cool if that's what they want to do. But think of how many people, and just pay attention to how many people are living like a stone rather than a spirit.
That's so powerful, living like a stone rather than a spirit. And just bringing it back full circle, guys, this is just a little bit of an elaborate, of a condensed explanation of why we do what we do. Well, I could literally sit here with Isaiah and keep talking to you guys about this subject for the next 2 hours, but we're not going to do that because we're running out of time here. So I'm going to go ahead and let Isaiah say what is the last thing he wants to leave us off with. Then we'll pass it to me, and we'll move forward with our lives.
Yeah, I think the last thing is, you know, the one thing I was telling somebody the other day, if I could tell my daughter something or something along those lines, and that was dang near the last thing I could say, it would be something along the lines of see the beauty in the world, appreciate the beauty, see God's creation for how beautiful it is, but never be naive to how cold and how dark the world can also be.
That's so powerful. That is so powerful. And for me, guys, if I'm going to leave us off with one last thing, I would say look at the beauty that you have right in front of your eyes because sometimes the most beautiful things are the ones you see the least. Things that should be treasured the most are usually right in front of your face, but you're so caught up on mundane stupidity that you choose to ignore it. Alrighty, guys, that's going to be this episode. We hope you got some sort of value from it. As always, like, share, comment, subscribe, and pass on the information to somebody that you feel can benefit from you. We'll upload this video. You guys get to do your thing, and we'll see you guys next week. Peace out.